Everyone seems to think that Billy sacrificed himself to save Eleven, but in reality, I think the truth is much darker than that, and Billy never stood a chance. He was the perfect victim to the Mind Flayer, and it was all part of Vecna's plan. So let's break down what really happened in his final moments, why he was always doomed, and what it all means. To understand why Billy was chosen, we have to look at the Mind Flayer's pattern. Now, just a caveat, I think the pattern of the Mind Flayer and Vecna are the same when it comes to picking their prey, given the fact that Vecna is being influenced by the Mind Flayer. Billy on the surface was the teen who had it all, but underneath it there was also repression, guilt, isolation and vulnerability. We initially thought Billy was chosen because of opportunity. His car just happened to break down in that isolated spot. But now we know how much Vecna has planned. We know that there are no coincidences. He was targeted specifically. Billy and Will had their uses to the Mind Flayer and to Vecna, and that is why they were utilised by them. Unlike characters such as Barb, which is why she was killed so quickly, there wasn't much repression, trauma for them to sink their teeth into. Billy was the perfect target for being able to charm, trap, and physically restrain his victims, to allow the Mind Flayer to expand his hive mind, but also to weaken Vecna's key targets. So what exactly allowed Billy to fall prey to the Mind Flayer? Well, it was his dad that really helped put Vecna's plan into motion here. And don't worry, I will get into how this falls into Vecna's plan, but in reality, this does make Billy's dad the main villain of the story, because without being such an awful human being, Vecna's plan wouldn't have worked. You see, Billy was raised by a man who punishes softness, humiliated vulnerability, and only rewarded dominance. Billy thought for him to settle into Hawkins, he had to dethrone King Steve and become top dog, despite a part of him wanting to be friends with him at the same time.
You were moving your feet. Plant them next time. Draw a charge.
It's like he doesn't really know how to connect with people. He grew up in an environment where he should have been safe, but instead he was subjected to violence and humiliation by the person who was supposed to love and protect him. And underneath all of this, we see that Billy is just a child looking for love when it wasn't there. This emotional repression is exactly what the Mind Flayer feeds on. Before we get on to Billy's final moments and how this all plays into Vecna's plans, I just want to discuss the importance of Billy's first victims whilst infected by the Mind Flayer, because it emphasises how the attacks are not random and analyses why Billy didn't attack Max or Elle sooner, or even Mrs. Wheeler. You see, when Billy was first infected by the Mind Flayer, he goes back to the port and Mrs. Wheeler follows him into the room where they are both alone, where she explains to him why she didn't turn up at the hotel. And we see a flash of the Mind Flayer wanting to attack her, but Billy manages to resist and tells her to get out. Was Billy just stronger at this point? Had the Mind Flayer not taken full control? Or is there more to it? So let's look at his first target, which was none other than Heather. Now again, we could break this down to opportunity because she also works at the pool. But if that was the case, why not start with Mrs. Wheeler? Or Max, who literally lives in the same house as him. What makes Heather so special? We don't see much of Heather, but this scene suggests that her home life wasn't as picture perfect as it looks. Her dad clearly doesn't think much of women, and this seems to extend to his wife. But what really struck me was how he didn't seem surprised when Heather attacked him. He tried to reason with her, almost understood that she would want to hurt him. To me, this hints that there's more abuse happening in this household too. I also think it's interesting that they initially drugged her mum, but not the dad. The way she hits him with a bottle and says it will all be over soon, Daddy. Is it just me? Or did that not entirely seem like the Mind Flayer? Let me know your thoughts on that below. Equally, just before they feed him to the Flayer, Heather goes up to her dad, where Billy goes up to Heather's mum. Heather blamed the dad, and from Billy, maybe he had anger to those who turned a blind eye to abuse. Regardless, it seems clear that her household had the same oppressive atmosphere that Billy grew up in. Now, of course, before they got there, the plans almost got derailed when Elle and Max showed up at the house, and Billy tells them to go. Despite the pure rage in watching Elle walk away, why not strike? Why not drug the pair of them at the same time? Did he feel too outnumbered? Like he wasn't ready to take on Elle yet? Given the way he fights her not long after, I don't think that fits. It could be Billy not wanting to hurt Max, trying to resist, but I think there was another reason to it. And at this point, it's because Max was happy, she had friends, purpose, she felt at home. Max wasn't vulnerable enough to Vecna's attack yet. And this tells us everything. The Mind Flayer intentionally targets people with trauma and unhappiness. So no, Billy, Will and Heather were not unlucky. They fit the exact profile that Vecna wanted. They allowed him to set the trap. So let's look at Billy's final moments again, and why it not be the redemption arc that everyone was hoping for. Fans, and even Max, often refer to Billy dying to save Elle. But on closer look, I'm just not quite sure that that's accurate. Whilst infected by the Mind Flayer, Billy is attacking Elle. Elle, who now has more insight into Billy, makes him remember his happy memories. And it works. It gives Billy the power to resist, and he takes back control of himself. She reminds him that he was once happy, because she knows that he hasn't been for a long time. He gets off Elle and confronts the Mind Flayer, and at first he looks afraid. And then the rage hits. Now, violence is the only emotional language that Billy was ever taught. And in that moment, it was all Billy had left. He wasn't saving Elle, so to speak. He was attacking the thing that hurt him, the thing that exploited his pain, into controlling him to do unforgivable things. So he fought back, the only way he knew how. And deep down, Billy knew he wasn't coming out of that alive. Billy knew what he had done. During the sauna test, we see a distraught Billy saying it wasn't his fault. All the bad things that he did, he was made to do them by the shadow. We see him breaking. Was this the Mind Flayer's attempt at manipulation? I don't think so. The heat had him weakened at this point, and not long after that speech, we see him reach for the shard, and then Will feels his presence. The Mind Flayer then regains control. So I think for those moments at least, we were seeing the real Billy. And it's clear that he wouldn't know how to get over all of this. He wouldn't be able to face Max. He wouldn't even be able to face himself. There was no moving on for Billy. There was no moving on from the things that the Mind Flayer made him do. He knew that there was no future waiting for him. In that moment, he wasn't sacrificing himself. He chose the only thing he understood, what his life had taught him, and that was to fight. He knew he wouldn't win. He fully understood that. He knew how to take a beating. He didn't want to win. He just wanted it to be over. He didn't intentionally die a hero. He died not knowing another way out. And if you think it couldn't get any darker, this is exactly what Vecna was counting on. You know earlier when I mentioned that Max couldn't be cursed by Vecna yet? Well, what if I said Billy's collapse wasn't the goal? Max's collapse was. I'm not doing mental gymnastics. Think about it. Billy dying violently in front of Max, while Max could do nothing, created the exact kind of trauma Vecna preys on. It broke Max. It filled her with guilt, helplessness, nightmares, trauma. A psychological wound that just sits there, quietly rotting, just waiting for Vecna to exploit. Vecna didn't just want Billy, he wanted the repercussions of Billy's death, the trauma to spread, the group to become fractured. Not only that, but allegedly, 30 Hawkins residents' lives were lost that night. Although, of course, this was meant to have included Hopper. Think of the knock-on effects that would have had across Hawkins. No wonder Henry could go on to manipulate all of those children into being scared of monsters that only he could save them from. That night, despite the group looking like they got the win, Vecna got exactly what he wanted. There is a reason why these gates look like scars. Every time a gate is opened, it comes from pain, or pain being left in its wake. And just like old wounds, these gates can be reopened. Vecna and the Mind Flayer scattered pain and trauma all over Hawkins to make them even more vulnerable to their repeated attacks. And he got exactly what he wanted. Billy's death shattered Max. He was a perfect target for Vecna's plan. He was chosen because his fall would bring Max and the entire group to their knees. And it worked. Just not quite as well as he hoped. He wasn't counting on Max going without a fight, with friends that would never give up on her. So let's look at why there is light at the end of the Scarlet Haze, and where, unlike Billy, Max is not doomed, and what all of this means for the final fight. Where Billy had no support system, he didn't have a single person he felt he could be emotionally honest with. And even if he didn't know how. He grew up in a house full of fear. His defense mechanism was building a persona embodying an alpha male, the fighter, the aggressor, the guy who hits first and nobody hits him. The Mind Flayer didn't have to break Billy's mind. Billy's life had already done that. Max, on the other hand, isn't alone. She has Lucas and the rest of the group watching out for her. And when things get bad, she does seek help. She tries therapy. But here is the key. When Vecna initially cursed her, she wasn't completely opening up. She was still disconnected from her friends, and she wasn't being open with a therapist. Admittedly, she couldn't really tell her the full story. But when she did actually stand a chance against Vecna, it's because she had found her way back to the group, to her friends. She was starting to open up, to heal. And unfortunately, healing isn't that linear, and she fell prey to him again. But what Stranger Things has shown us is that happiness, joy, connection, people not giving up on each other has been Vecna's biggest weakness. Each time the group has survived, it's by working together, even if they're in complete different locations. Without having these things, it's hard to escape him, and that is why Billy never stood a chance. Billy didn't die a hero, he died a victim of a lifetime of trauma. Billy was doomed because he was in it alone. Billy thought there was no way out, but Max will show us that there always is. And one thing we know for certain is pure just physical force isn't going to be enough to take down Vecna. And that's the lesson Stranger Things has been screaming at us. Trauma isolates, but connection saves. And season 5 will prove that. Anyway guys, what do you think? Should I wash my mouth out? Did Billy just die sacrificing himself? Is all of this a string of coincidences? Let me know your thoughts below, and as always, I'll see you next time.